So bidding modes aside, what do we actually pay and where does that come from? So you will bid something and then you will pay something. That amount you pay relative to your bid, it's not always the same. So it'll eventuate from the bidding systems and models used, the different algorithms and auction types, as well as competition. So when things are very, very competitive and you've got other advertisers around, you need to bid higher to pay more per impression. And that also leads to price floors, where in this competitive landscape, there's minimums that you need to be above to actually get traffic. So what you actually have to pay in the end depends on competition, and the amount that you specifically pay relative to your bid depends on various algorithms used and the auction types used. So now what I want to do is get a little bit technical and introduce several auction types, which then are reflected in bidding modes and algorithms, so that you have a better idea of the raw mechanics and theory that go on behind various bidding systems. And this will kind of help you, just generally understand why the bidding systems work the way they do. And secondly, it can kind of give you insight into how to best game systems and how to best approach systems when you know the actual bidding or the auction theories that they employ. The first bidding system or auction model or theory that I'll introduce is Vickrey-Clark-Groves, or VCG. Now, VCG is a silent auction system where you have sealed bids, meaning that no one knows your bid and no one can see them, or at least in a practical, real-life auction, this would be the case. Now, with VCG, the highest bidder wins, but the actual amount they pay is that of the second highest bidder. So if I bid $1 and the second highest bidder bids 80 cents, I win, I pay 80 cents. So you never pay more than you bid. I guess conceivably you could pay almost exactly the same as you bid if two people bid like 0.799 and someone bids 0.8. Anyway, that's beside the point. Now, because of this, it's easy to actually bid very, very aggressively and take traffic from established competitors who have optimized their campaigns, because all you need to do is bid higher than everyone else to win impressions. Now, the most well-known actual traffic source that uses VCG is Facebook. Now, one thing I should also mention about VCG is that it does not reward conservative bidding. So if you bid low or underbid and try to bid safely, you will just get no traffic, and often it can even lead to delivery of lower quality traffic than if you were bidding higher. So if you're on a system like Facebook with VCG, when you're first starting campaigns, it's generally better to bid higher so that you take the top impressions from everyone else. So you're at the top of the pile in terms of winning impressions and getting the highest quality impressions. Now, on Facebook, in VCG specifically, in the long run, at least according to the auction theory, bidding accurately, i.e. closer to the actual value of the item, i.e. the click or impression, will lead to a better return on ad spend. Now, for many of you who have any experience with Facebook, this will seem relatively odd. And another thing that will seem odd is the fact that you bid some amount, and then the amount you pay, at least on Facebook, is clearly not what the second highest person is bidding. Now, we'll get into detail on why that is later when I talk about Facebook. Now, on Facebook specifically, is definitely the case that bidding really, really low and underbidding leads to lower quality traffic, so definitely don't do that. Now, VCG forms the basis for another auction theory called generalized second price auction, which is also used by many traffic sources. Now, GSP is like VCG, but the highest bidder pays that of the second highest, just like in VCG, but they get the first impression slot. So, and then the second highest bidder, they pay that of the third highest bidder, and they get the second impression slot, and so on and so on. Now, GSP is very similar to VCG. The key difference is that the top bidder, they pay that of the second bidder, and they get the first impression slot. The second highest bidder, they pay that of the third highest bidder, and they get the second impression slot, and so on and so on. So GSP kind of makes a lot of sense in an ecosystem or an environment where there are multiple versions or quantities of some product that are up for sale. Now, in the advertising ecosystem, this is going to be the first impression on a website or the impression at a top ad slot versus an ad slot lower in some sort of delivery column. So that makes sense and has some practical benefits. And it also allows for incorporation of other factors like quality scores and so on in the actual bidding process. And it makes it easy to actually show people bidders their position amongst their competitors because of this cascading nature of the actual bidding process. Now, GSP is most notably used by Google and AdWords, as well as Yahoo, and it's used on most or many display advertising sources. Now, as opposed to VCG, GSP actually rewards conservative bidding. So if you're on a GSP-based system like AdWords, you can actually bid low and progressively increase your bids, and you move up and start taking, the fifth impression slot, the fourth, the third, and you can slowly move up and watch how the bids you require to get traffic change and how the amount of impressions change, the quality of those impressions, and so on, as you raise your bid. And you can bid relatively conservatively and still get traffic because of this cascading nature of the actual impression inventory, as opposed to VCG, where if you bid quite low, you tend to get much less traffic, and often this is traffic which is very, very low down in the cascading queue of impression quality. And finally, the last auction type that I wanted to present is FPSB, or first price sealed bid. This is also called a blind auction. Now, in a blind auction, the highest bidder wins the impressions, all of them, or a specific amount based on their advertising budget and available traffic. Can't kind of win everything if you can't pay for everything. And they pay what they bid regardless of the other bidders. So if you bid $5 and you win, you pay $5. Now, the second highest bidder, they get the same. They pay whatever they bid, but they get less traffic. So the system will divvy out traffic based on who's willing to pay what. So if someone's willing to pay $10 and the next highest bidder is willing to pay $1, obviously the person paying $10, all else being equal, is going to take virtually all of that traffic. Now, it depends a lot on the delivery algorithms of the traffic sources, how they deliver traffic between different people, your budgets, and so on. But hopefully you can see that this kind of bidding mode, or this auction theory, is very, very dangerous for advertising. If you pay what you bid, regardless of the actual competitive landscape and what the average CPM is on that traffic source, then you can do really dangerous things like bid $10 or accidentally put an extra zero in there, and the system, it's not lenient. It is not forgiving, and it charges you that even if it is just a mind-bogglingly stupid bid. So most people have stories of someone who accidentally puts a zero in and bids $30 CPM instead of $3. They get a huge burst of traffic. They actually meant to bid $3. The traffic or the traffic source honors that bid, and they end up spending several $1,000s in under an hour because of that system. So if you're working on a platform which uses first price sealed bid or a blind auction, for God's sakes, be aware of that and be very, very careful that you don't accidentally overbid and burn through budgets. Now, one interesting thing to point out here is that this first price sealed bid, or FPSB auction theory, it's essentially the parent of VCG. So this is first price sealed bid. VCG is also sealed bid, but it's second price because you pay the price of the second bidder. So they're kind of like a similar system, whereas VCG is just far more forgiving in terms of overbidding. In fact, you want to overbid for various reasons, whereas with first price sealed bid, you definitely don't want to do that. Another thing I wanted to point out is that VCG itself is only really sensible in an automated environment rather than in real-world situations, for various reasons that I won't get into. Mainly comes down to the fact that aggressively bidding and paying what the second person bid, it doesn't really work very well in practice for auction systems, for art, for example. So, to summarize, you have VCG, GSP, and essentially flat rate, nasty blind auctions that will decide to sap all of your budget in seconds if you're not careful. VCG used by Facebook, GSP used by AdWords and many media buying platforms. First price sealed bid, really don't even want to know about it, but unfortunately it is present in various advertising traffic sources. Now, hopefully this makes you think a little bit more about what's happening when you're actually engaging in these bidding processes for ads. You're essentially competing in a stock market or a stock trading market where there's all these things happening in almost real time, or at least under 500 milliseconds, as everyone bids for these impressions. And there's various systems and theories involved, and there's algorithms, and everything is kind of flying around and programmatically being reconciled and being calculated, and these transactions are happening. Now, in the end, the experience that you have on particular platforms will lead to effective bidding strategies, and it's worthwhile to know why something is actually going to be effective in the first place, rather than just finding out from experience. So obviously things borne out by experience are great, but if you do come up with an effective bidding strategy for platform X, it's great if you can say that this works well because it's GSP, and for that reason this bidding strategy works like this, and so on. Now, that's all I want to say about the bidding side of things. Let's move on to how you get paid. So conversion flows and revenue models.